The wind wailed across the desolate expanse of the planet Vidian 6, stirring the dense bioluminescent foliage that throbbed with an uncanny, rhythmic luminescence. Riven tightened the straps of the supply pack, exhaling slowly as he surveyed the alien terrain around him. He had spent months on this world, documenting its extraordinary ecosystem, analyzing the behavior of its native flora and fauna, and gathering samples for further study. Alone, serene, just the way he preferred it. But today, something felt wrong. There was a presence nearby, one that crawled beneath his skin, setting his nerves on edge. His muscles coiled as he slowly pivoted, scanning the lush, jungle-like surroundings. His instincts had never failed him before, and they weren't failing him now. Then he heard it, a sharp, commanding voice laced with frustration and desperation, piercing through the thick, humid air. "You, human?" Riven's grip tightened on his datapad as he turned fully toward the voice. Standing just beyond a cluster of glowing trees was a figure unlike anything he had ever encountered. She was tall, her lithe frame covered in smooth, iridescent skin that shifted fluidly between deep violet and shimmering silver. Twin horns curled elegantly from her forehead, accentuating her sharp, otherworldly features. But it was her eyes that held him captive, a mesmerizing shade of molten gold, locking onto him with an intensity that sent a chill down his spine. Riven had seen countless strange things his time as a researcher, but nothing quite like her. Hello," Riven said cautiously, his voice tinged with uncertainty. The alien woman took a step closer, her movements fluid, as if she were gliding rather than walking. "You are unbonded." It wasn't a question. It was a statement, firm, unwavering. Riven blinked. "I what?" Her brow furrowed, a flicker of frustration crossing her elegant features. "You are without a mate, without a tether, without connection." Her voice hardened. "That is why I have chosen you." Riven took an instinctive step back. "Chosen me?" He narrowed his eyes. "For what exactly?" She let out a sharp exhale, her tail flicking behind her in agitation. "The bonding ritual. I require a mate, and you are compatible." Riven stared at her, his mind racing to process her words. The concept wasn't entirely foreign. He had read brief reports about certain alien species practicing pairing rituals. But this was the first time he had been personally confronted with it, and the unwavering determination in her gaze made it clear she wasn't asking. "You must be mistaken," he said, shaking his head. "I'm not whatever it is you're looking for. I'm just a researcher. I have no interest in bonding, mating, or anything like that." Her golden eyes darkened. "You deny me?" Yeah, I guess I do." The alien woman let out a low, guttural growl, her fists clenching at her sides. "Do you understand what this means for me?" Riven sighed, running a hand through his dark, tousled hair. "I don't even know who you are." She straightened, as if reminding herself of her own identity. "I am Zava the Kaith." "Right, Zava. And you're saying you need to bond with me?" "Yes." "Why?" For a moment, something vulnerable flickered across her face. "Because if I do not, I will be unclaimed. Cast out. I will become nothing." Riven paused, the sharp edge in her voice striking a chord in him. Whatever this ritual was, whatever this bonding meant to her species, it was clearly not something trivial. Still, that didn't mean he was going to agree to something so bizarre. "I'm sorry to hear that," he said carefully. "But I don't even know what this bonding entails. And even if I did, I'm not sure I'd be the right person for it." Zava's jaw tightened, her frustration growing visible. "You are the right person. I have chosen you." "Why?" She hesitated. "You are unlike the others." Riven frowned. "What others?" Zava exhaled, her tail flicking once more before she finally spoke. "The Kaith do not bond with our own kind. We must seek a mate who is different, one who will complete us in ways we cannot complete ourselves." Her eyes searched his, looking for some understanding. "It is how we survive." Riven crossed his arms. "And you think I complete you?" "Yes." He let out a short, dry chuckle. "That's a hell of a claim to make about someone you just met." Zava's frustration softened. shifting into something more fragile. I felt it, she whispered. The moment I saw you, the tether, the pull. You may not understand it, but I do. Riven was silent. A part of him wanted to dismiss it as superstition or instinct gone wrong. But another part, one buried deep beneath his logical, scientific mind, couldn't ignore the genuine conviction in her voice. Still, this was insane. I'm sorry, he said again, more firmly this time. But I can't do this. Zava's expression darkened, not with anger, but something dangerously close to fear. You do not understand, she murmured. If I fail to bond before my time runs out, I will be exiled. I will no longer be Kaith. Her voice wavered, though she tried to mask it. I will become hollow. The way she said the word sent a shiver down Riven's spine. And that means... She swallowed hard. It means I will cease to exist as I am. My people will strip my name, my place, my very identity. I will be nothing more than a wanderer, a shadow without meaning. A heavy silence hung between them. Riven wasn't heartless. He understood what it meant to lose a place of belonging. But how was he supposed to agree to something so permanent? Before he could respond, Zava slowly raised her hands. Riven's gaze followed, his stomach tightening as he noticed something he hadn't seen before. Faint, glowing lines spreading along her forearms, pulsing with a soft, ethereal blue light. They looked almost like veins, but more intricate, like roots weaving beneath her skin. This is the calling, she murmured. The first sign that my body is preparing. Riven looked at Z now, standing before him in the soft glow of the shrine. Her golden eyes held steady, patient yet expectant. The weight of the moment settled deep in his chest. The shrine's question echoed in his mind once more. Do you wish to stand alone? He had always believed solitude was safety, that keeping others at arm's length meant freedom, control. No attachments, no disappointments, no risk of loss. It had been easier that way, until now. He thought of the first trial, the overwhelming wave of Z's emotions, how he had felt her isolation as if it were his own. He had told himself he could walk away. But had he ever truly been separate? Hadn't her loneliness mirrored something buried within him? Something he had refused to name? He thought of the second trial, how they had moved in perfect synchrony, instinct guiding them where thought had hesitated, how it had felt natural, as if they had always been meant to find each other. And now, this final test, not of mind, not of body, but of choice. His fingers pressed against the stone, the warmth beneath his palm thrumming like a heartbeat. His own heartbeat or something deeper. He took a breath, steadying himself, then closed his eyes. No, the word was barely spoken, yet it resonated through him, through the shrine, through the space between him and Z. The stone pulsed beneath his hand, its glow intensifying. The energy around them shifted, humming, alive. Z inhaled sharply, her gaze never leaving his face. Then, slowly, she stepped closer, lifting her hand to rest atop his against the shrine. The warmth intensified, wrapping around them like an unseen thread, weaving their souls together. For a brief, endless moment, the universe stilled. Then the glow faded, the air settled, and Riven realized it was done. Z exhaled, something unreadable passing over her expression before it softened. The bond is sealed. Riven pulled his hand back, flexing his fingers. He felt different, not just physically, but in a way he couldn't quite define, as if a door within him had opened, one he hadn't even realized was locked. Z watched him carefully. Are you afraid? Riven hesitated, then gave a small, almost rueful smile. Yeah, but not as much as I thought I'd be. Her lips curved just slightly in return. Good. A quiet moment passed between them, something unspoken but understood. Then Z turned toward the jungle, her tail flicking behind her. Come, she said. There is much to learn. Riven glanced once more at the shrine, at the place where his life had changed in a single choice. Then, with a steady breath, he followed. Riven stood there, the weight of the moment settling into him. He had made his choice, and there was no turning back. Z watched him closely, not with expectation, but with something deeper, understanding. She had never forced him, never demanded, only waited. He took a slow breath and shook his head. "No," he said, voice steady. "I don't." The shrine pulsed beneath his palm, warmth flooding through him. It started gently, then grew stronger, a tether forming, pulling him towards something greater, toward her. Z inhaled sharply, her golden eyes widening just slightly. "It is done." Riven pulled his hand away, breathing hard. His skin tingled, but he didn't feel different. No pain, no overwhelming force, just a quiet certainty. Z took a step forward. "You chose me." Riven let out a breathless laugh. "Guess I did." Something shifted in her expression. Relief, warmth, something deeper. Slowly, she reached up, placing her palm against his chest, just over his heart. Riven stiffened at the touch, but then another warmth spread through him, mirroring his own. It wasn't invasive. It wasn't overwhelming. It was just there, a connection. Z's voice was softer than he had ever heard it. "You are mine now." He swallowed. "And you're mine." For the first time since he had met her, Z truly smiled. And Riven knew this was only the beginning. The warmth of the bond pulsed through his chest, steady and undeniable. It wasn't just in his mind. It was real. Something had changed. Z studied him, searching. "Do you feel it?" Riven exhaled slowly. "Yeah, I do." He wasn't sure how to describe it. It wasn't mind reading. It wasn't an overwhelming flood of emotions. It was awareness, like a presence beside him, unshakable, constant. Z's fingers curled slightly against his chest before she pulled her hand away. "The bond has been accepted." Riven blinked. "That's it? No sudden rush of knowledge? No dramatic visions?" Z gave him a knowing look. "Would you prefer something more dramatic?" Riven snorted. "Honestly, I don't know what I was expecting." Her tail flicked behind her, amused. "The bond is not an immediate transformation, Riven. It does not force itself upon you. It grows, expands, strengthens with time." Riven nodded slowly. "So what happens now?" She was silent for a moment, considering. "Now you adjust." Riven frowned. "Adjust to what?" Z didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached out, lightly tapping his forehead with 2 fingers. A sudden rush of sensation hit him. Not a thought, not a memory, but an impression, like feeling the sun on his skin after days in the cold, like breathing fresh air after being underwater too long. It wasn't her voice, wasn't her mind. It was simply her, the way she existed, the way she felt. And underneath it all, relief. A deep, quiet relief. Because she no longer had to carry the weight of solitude. Riven sucked in a sharp breath and stepped back instinctively. He swallowed, shaking his head. "That was weird." Z lowered her hand. "You will experience this more often now. Not always as strongly, but you will feel me, and I will feel you." Riven ran a hand through his hair, still trying to process. "I don't even know how to describe it." Z tilted her head. "Try." Riven exhaled. "It's like, I know you're there, even without looking. And I know how you feel, but not in a way that's invasive. It's just present." Z nodded. "That is the bond." He hesitated. "And you feel me the same way?" Her gaze softened just slightly. "Yes." Riven glanced away, rubbing the back of his neck. "That's going to take some getting used to." Z studied him for a long moment. "You are afraid." Riven stiffened. "What?" "No, He stopped. Because she knew. Not because she was guessing. Not because she was reading his body language. She could feel it. He let out a sharp breath. "This is going to take a lot of getting used to." Z's lips twitched slightly, almost like a suppressed smile. "Perhaps." Riven crossed his arms. "All right. So, what happens if I start thinking about something embarrassing? Are you just going to know?" She gave him an amused look. "I will not know the thought, but I may sense the emotion." Riven groaned. "That's even worse." Her tail flicked again, her amusement growing. "Do not be so distressed. Human, it is not my intention to pry into your emotions. I will not push. Only listen." Riven sighed. Guess I don't have much choice in the matter. Z's expression grew more serious. You always have a choice, Riven. He blinked at her sudden change in tone. She stepped closer, her gaze steady. The bond is not a cage. It is not something that traps you. If ever you feel that you do not want it, if ever you feel that it is too much, I will not force it. Riven frowned. I thought this was permanent. She was quiet for a moment. Then, softly, she said, "Nothing is truly permanent." He studied her. "You don't want me to leave, though." Her tail stilled. She didn't answer immediately. Then, just barely above a whisper, she said, "No." Riven exhaled. He hadn't expected her to admit it so easily, but he felt the truth of her words, not just in the way she spoke them, but in the quiet hum of the bond between them. He didn't know how to respond, so he said the only thing that felt right. "I'm not going anywhere." Z inhaled softly, the tension in her shoulders easing. For the first time, Riven let himself accept the bond. It wasn't terrifying. It wasn't suffocating. It just was. And, strangely enough, that was okay.